focus on design. We're not going to focus on design because we are more concerned about the functionalities now. Okay, so we'll start with this. We're going to start with this. Okay, so what we're going to do now is in our class 5, we'll do some little designs in our class 5. So the first thing first is I will have to create a div. I'll give it an ID, call it the sides menu. Okay. Now this is where our side menu is going to stay. But for now, we'll give it a class. Okay. The class. Give it a class hidden for now. Okay. Class hidden. That means in our CSS, we should have. Let me first of all do some global resetting here. Margin 0 and padding 0. Okay. 0. Okay. So now I'm just going to have the dot hidden as a class hidden for now. I say display none. Okay. So that we will not see it yet because we're not yet working with it. Okay. So the sidebar will just be there. Okay. So sidebar. Then the next thing is the counter we're going to do. Okay, but before we do the counter, let's first of all give the body of, of the page. Okay, the body. We give the body a background color of, let's say, let me see how this Azure look like. Yeah, okay, I think it's okay. Yeah. So give the body this background color. Then we're going to create a div for the counter. Let's say the counter. Okay. Now, what we say the counter. Uh, First thing first, we're going to have the since I'm designing them together. Now, there's something we will need to put into consideration. Now, this guy is not inside the side menu, so we need this guy on the main part of the because the counter does not have anything of such. You understand? So that is to tell you that this menu whatsoever here now, okay, will be with the main page since we are designing the both of them together. So we'll have something like, let's just say, uh, okay, let's just say div. Okay, now the div will give it a kind of an ID. Let's just call it main. Okay, that's the main. That's the main whatsoever. So inside div now we can now have a header where that toggler will stay. Okay. If we even want to add menus, we can have other top menu in it if we want to. Okay. Then then after the header, we now have the div for the counter. Okay. Here. So let me just also drop a comment on it and say counter div. Okay. Okay. I'll do the counter div. Now inside the counter div now, we're simply going to give it an ID, and the ID will be something like let's just say cdiff, for instance. That's counter diff. Okay, or let's just say counter diff. Let's call it for the sake of reviewing the codes. Okay, now counter diff. Now on the counter diff, what we're going to do to the counter diff from our CSS is we're going to make it stay in the middle. So we're simply going to say uh, hash counter diff. Okay, so we'll give it a maximum width. Okay, we give it a maximum width of uh, let's say uh, let's say 19%. Okay. Now why I gave it 90% is because of mobile responsiveness. Okay, I'm going to show you that. Let's give the minimum height of let's say minimum height of 300 pixel. Okay, now let's set a background color of white on it. Then let's also have some shadow, some little shadow in it, boss shadow rather. Okay, boss shadow. Uh, 0, 0, let's say 5 pixel by let's say uh, a a or let's just say DDD, hash DDD. Okay, so let's see how it goes. So have this box here now. Okay, so now this is not actually what how we need the box to look like. Okay, well, before that, let me give it a margin auto. Okay, so that it will position in the middle. Then top and bottom, you can say 20 VH. Okay, then right and left can be auto, so that it will almost look like staying at the middle of our page. Okay, but now we don't want it to be as big as this, so we have to give it a width of, okay, let's give it a width of, let's say 500 pixel. Okay, so give it a width of 500 pixel. Again, it's still like this. Okay, there are two different things. Maximum width is you're trying to constrain that, not to pass that limit. Doesn't mean that you are giving it a width. You understand? So like why I did that constraint now is this. If that constraint is not there, look at the reason why I did that constraint. If that constraint is not there, if I refresh this now, it's still okay what I need. But in terms of mobile, look at the width. It takes the whole size of the screen because this screen is smaller than 500. Okay, but assuming that 90% is there, not get to the edges. You understand? So that is just it. So it will not get to the edges, no matter how you reduce. You understand? So it will only stop increasing like this. And when it gets to 500, that is the appropriate width. You understand? So that's what I mean when I said I did that because of mobile responsiveness. Okay, we can also add a border radius to it. Okay, radius. Okay, 20 pixel, so that we'll have curved edges on it. Okay, so now this is our counter div. Now go back to HTML and start to put the content in it. So see, first one is the the what's it called, H1. Okay, we'll simply put counter. Okay, so with this we have a counter like this. What we will do is from our what we are trying to design here, you see how it is. So we can set everything to center. Okay, so another thing again we can do to make it easier for us to handle is we can do this, make this a div inside and put the H1 inside the div. Then what we're now going to do is we will come to our CSS, this counter div, we can make it display flex. Okay, so when we make it display flex here now, it will be able for us to, it will be easy to for us to align to center and justify to center. Okay, so with that, all our content will just be in the center. You understand? So with this now, we can just continue adding what we want to add. Okay, so the next thing is I can have H2. Okay, now I think this one should be the H1. Okay, So put 0 there. Okay. Then let this one be a H2. Okay. So inside the H2, we simply have a counter. Okay. So um, under it, we'll simply have another div, and inside this div, we'll have three buttons. Okay, three buttons. Okay, now the first one will be to increase, right? Or let's say decrease. And the second one will be to reset. Okay, and the third one will be to increase. Okay, so let's separate them. Um, so, yeah, okay, so with this now we have this structure here. Okay, this is what we have. So what we're going to do now is, okay, you want to say something? Yes, we have to also align, sorry, test align to center. Okay, so that everybody will inherit test align center. Okay, so with this, we can then start working on the individual elements inside the counter div. Okay, I'll start with the H2, which is the one at the top. Okay, you can give it a margin button of let's say 6 pixel. Okay, then in fact we can say the H2 here. Okay, H2, then H1, then the div. Because you know that you can separate them with comma like this. Hope you know that separating the reference with comma, then all of them now will have margin button 6 pixel. Okay, so if we increase this for we increase it here, we increase for everybody. Okay, so as long as that is same style, then for the individual styling, they will now come on their own. Okay, each one now will now come on their own. Okay, now the H2, we can decide to increase the font size a little bit. Okay, you can increase the font size for like 2RA and see how it looks like. Okay, then for the H1, for the H1, we'll have to um, also increase the font size maybe to 4REM. Okay, 4REM for the H1. Then according to the sample you saw there, the color should be kind of green, right? Let's use dark green. Then for dark green, okay. So this have this counter. Then for the buttons, okay, for the buttons, uh, we can just, even though they are inside a div for button, hope you know that we can still just ignore the div and affect them like this to still work on them. Okay, so even though they are grandchildren. So for the buttons, we will simply, what we're going to do with the button is just add, increase the padding. I think that's all. Increase the padding, padding top and bottom, 5 pixel, right and left, 15 pixel, and that should be it. Okay, so we'll have this. So with this, our styling is done. So the next thing is to add our JavaScript events. Okay, so let me just add cursor pointer to them. So they'll have pointer cursor. Okay, so now going to JavaScript, these three buttons will need to give them separate ID. Need to give them a separate ID. So btn, okay, btn what? Then this h1, let's just conclude with the button. Btn d, that's for decrease. Btn, or let's just say btn add, btn minus, okay, okay. Let's say btn reset, okay. Then also we say this is btn add, okay. So those are the three buttons. Then for this h1, we're going to add it to, we're going to give it an id too. We'll call it results. Let's just call it results, okay. Then I think that's all we need, because when we click on any of this, it should be able to affect the results. So that's everything we need, just the results and the buttons, okay. So now that we've given them ID, we'll come to our JavaScript. Then we'll start with the increase, okay. So btn add, we can simply say documents, okay, documents dot query selector. Of course, you know the difference between query selector and get element by ID. They are the same thing. So yeah, hope you treated all these things. Okay. So we'll be using get element by ID. Let's use query selector this time around. You say hash between add, okay, dot add event listener, okay. We're adding event listener on click events. Okay, what do we want to do when you click on the button? So we simply want to trigger a function, okay. So the function, we just, let me put it this way, we want the the results, okay, to add one. So we'll simply say let's first of all get the initial value that is inside the results, okay. So we say let's initial value, let's say initial value, okay, is equal to, okay, we're going to get it from document dot get elements. Okay, sorry, I said let's use query selector here. So query selector, though it's still the same thing to work if I decide to use whatever I did there. So hash results, that is the div that have an ID result. Okay. I need what is inside it. So inner test. Okay. I need the inner test that is inside it. Okay. So with this, if we, let's say, let's check if we are actually getting the initial value, okay. So if I log this, if we go to our page and check our console, if you click on increase, it's giving you that initial value. But what we want to do here is we want to increase the initial value and reassign it to this guy, reassign it to the result again. You understand? So what we're going to do, let me comment for your review sake. Okay, so get the initial value on the div, on the results div. Okay, yeah, according, it's not always zero. As when you click, when you update it, initial value now becomes that new update. You understand? So initial value slash test. Okay, that's the test inside result div. Okay, then after getting the initial value, well, now the next thing we're going to do is to increment it the value, okay, and reassign reassign it to the result div, okay. We're assigning it to the results div. So what we're going to do here now is, if we want to assign something to the results div, we simply, how do we assign it? We simply say the results div, okay? Your inner text is equal to that thing, right? Let's say if I say how are you, okay? So that means if I assign that how are you, anytime you click on this, result still will be how are you. You understand? But that's not what we want to assign to it. We want to assign the initial value plus one. So we simply say initial value plus one. Okay. So anytime you click on it, you just be adding one to it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now the problem we have here now is you seeing this guy as a string. So you know string where you say plus there is concatenating. So that's why it's attaching the whole thing. So what we're supposed to do here is not just to get this, we're supposed to convert this guy to integer. Remember when we were doing Java, we did something like integer dot pass int. You understand? Uh-huh. So here now we have to pass this guy. We can do it here. Okay. That means as you are receiving, please receive with the integer value of it because text by default is a string value. So we can simply do pass int just like this. We don't need to do integer dot pass int. Then this thing will go into it. So as it's receiving it, okay, let me make it simple so that we don't get confused. Okay, let me just separate the line. Okay, let's say convert. Okay, convert or pass. Okay, the string value. Okay, to integer. Okay, so doing that, what we need to do is already we have the value here. So we can say, let's just use another variable for it. But all these ones are long processes because normally if I'm working on this with one line, I can do everything I'm doing now. But for understanding sake, we have to break it down. Okay, so let's use another variable to hold the converted one. So let's just say converted value, okay, is equal to uh, pass int, sorry, pass int, okay, of the initial value. Okay, so we're converting the initial value into integer value into this converted value. So it's not this converted value that will now add one to. So as long as this guy is an integer, it will not see this one as a concatenation again. It will not see it as normal addition. Understand? So with this, if we do this, it will not be increasing. Okay, so you cannot be increasing it. Okay, so same thing applies to button subtract. Okay, so I'll just copy and paste. Okay, just copy and paste. Let me comment here. Let's say we are doing coding, uh, coding or programming. Okay, the add button. Okay, so that's what we did there. Now let's do the subtract button, coding or coding slash programming. Okay, the subtract button. Okay, now in the case of the subtract button, it's the same thing that we're doing, button minus instead of button add. Okay, button minus is what we're adding the event to this time around. Okay, we still get the initial value, then pass it. Then the difference will not just be to minus here. Okay, so we are done. Nothing else. Okay, let me remove console messages. So that's just it. You don't need to do any other thing. Okay. So now another thing again I want to show you. We did it in Java too. It's the decrement and increment operator. Can as well use it here. Instead of saying minus one, okay? Instead of saying minus one, you can say plus plus. Okay? You can say plus plus. Here you can say minus minus. It's the same thing to work exactly the same way. Okay, why? No, that's supposed to have space. Plus plus minus minus. It's supposed to work. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, and let me do something here. Cannot assign function call to. Okay, sorry, that thing is. I can't really seem to see the problem with this. Why it's not working? It's supposed to work. Okay, maybe we'll try it in some other um, code. Okay, so yes, video time is already up to 26 minutes. Okay, so the reset is just to set it back to zero. So we'll do the reset button. Okay, so the reset button. So reset button, I don't think there's nothing to do in reset than to set the value to zero. That's all. So the value of the result, just set it to zero. So irrespective of what it is, just reset. So okay, sorry, BTN reset, yeah. Okay, BTN reset, yeah. So increase, reset, decrease, reset. Okay, so that's just it. So we're done with the counter. Let's just it as simple as that. Just clicking three events for the three buttons, and you're done. Okay. So now that we're done with the counter, let's see for the um, sidebar. Okay. So for the sidebar, we're going to remove the class hidden from it. Okay. We're going to add a class fixed. Okay. Okay. We're going to add a class fixed. Then um, we're going to add a class. Uh, okay. let's just leave it like this. I'm not complicating so let's say for the side menu. Okay. So hash side menu, we already have an ID. So let's work with the ID. Okay. Now the first thing first we're going to do here is to make the display fixed. Okay. Make the display fixed. Then we're going to have a height of 100 VH. I mean, take the entire height of the screen. Then we're also going to have a width of, let's say, 400 pixel. Okay. Hey, how are you? No, no, no. Okay. So now, what's happening here? What's happening here? It's because uh, what's it called? Uh, display fist. Sorry, it's supposed to be position fist. Okay. Uh, what's it called? The side menu. What happened there was the side menu is taking this whole height of the screen. So the other part now, which is the counterpart, have to come down to stay. You understand? So with position fist, okay, let me remove it like the mistake I was doing here. Now, as me will add a background color there, you will see what actually happened there. Okay, see what actually happened there. So you find out that you see this guy took this whole width now. Now when you scroll down, this is when you now see this guy. So, but what we tend doing is position fist, not display fist. Okay. So when we say position fist, it will just be there. Okay, but it's also starting from where this guy started from. So what we're going to do in this case is to, since the position is fixed, we can realign it to the top, to the top using top 0. So it will start from the top. Okay, now the width is too much, so we'll have to reduce the width. So let's say 200 or 250. Okay, we'll say 250. We'll have a side menu like this. Okay, so this is a side menu. Then also we said we need uh, the header. Okay, so I'll just do something very minimal because we don't have font or some or any other icon library. So we just use anything for it. So let me just do inline styling here first and foremost, and do test align right because I want it to stay at the right hand side of the screen. Okay. Let me see if I can get any of these uh, HTML entities. And okay, let's see. I'm looking for plus K plus P plus. Let's okay. Let's times. Okay, let's use times. Let me see what this one is. Okay, let's see times. Let's see. Okay, just use it like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give it a padding. Okay, the padding 20 pixel all around. Okay, like I told you, we're not going to focus more on the design majorly, but this is just for us to have something to click there. Okay, so we can increase, or I can just put it inside the span, or a button. Let's use the button. Button will be better. Okay, let's put it inside the button. So we'll have a button there with the this thing. So we don't need to do extensive styling on it too. So let's just add padding to the button. I think that's the little we need to add there. So let's say 5 pixel by 10 pixel. Okay. So with this, should have a button or we can click. Okay. So let's just assume this is our back. Okay. Uh, So we can just do something little to don't mind me. Font weight. Okay. So font weight. I want the font weight to be bold. Okay. And font size. I want the font size. Okay. Font size to be, let's say, 2 Okay. Well, it's too much. Let's leave the font size out of it. Let's just go with the bold. Two semicolon. Okay. Okay. So we now have a button to click. So now, the idea behind the sidebar, like I told you, we're not going to really design. We're just going to make it disappear and appear. Okay, the design, anything you want to design, I can just come inside it here. Okay, just come inside it. So let me change this color to shouty. Let's say white. Let's give it the same thing with that uh, that button there. Okay, so I think with this we have this side menu. Now, the idea behind the side menu is this: when you click on this to shift this guy out, okay, you click on it. When you click on, okay, I think there's supposed to be an X here according to the image we're dealing with. There's supposed to be an X here. Okay, so what we're going to do is just let us create that on the side menu. Okay, so inside the side menu, you can have a div. Okay, now the div will have HTML entity too. Let's just this time around, let's just use a span for it. Okay, let me copy this same thing here. Okay, but I want to change it to a span that does not have that button field in it. Okay, then this div, we're going to make it test align right. Okay, test align right. Okay, don't mind this VS Code. Yes. Uh, okay. So we have the button here too. Okay. So this one, I think we can increase the font size for this one. Okay. Or let's increase the font size here. I will also add, let's add two. Let's also add here a font size of, mm, let's say 2 RPM. Let's see how it looks like. Okay. I think we can manage that. 1.5. Let's make this just times without the bar. Okay. Mm, 1.7. Then also we have to make this guy display inline block, in block, okay, and cursor pointer, okay. So you have a cursor pointer here. So click on this, you should close this guy. Or click on this, you should open it. Okay. So now it's very simple. Now we can do it in such a way that by default, okay, sorry, by default, okay, now even as this width of this div is 250 pixel, okay, we can say the left position should be the left position, just the way we gave the top here now. The left is this side. By default, the left is 0. Okay, so if I put 0, nothing change. But if I put a value there, let's say I say the left is 500 pixel. Now you see that it will going to is going to shift 500 pixel from the edge. Okay, and the same way, if I say minus 500 pixel, because you know what will happen to go like this. You understand? So that's just the trick there. So I can do minus 250 pixel. That is to say the same space but to the left as it has as the width rather. Okay, as width. So now with this now we simply have it at the edge somewhere within the edge here, because if I remove maybe 50, let's make it 200, you're going to see that you're going to have a 50 pixel edge here. You understand? So let's take it back here. Now, so we've hidden it totally. Then we're going to create a class. Let's just say open dot open, or okay, yeah, dot open. I just say dot open. Now this class, we're going to say left is equal to 0. We're going to make it important. Okay. Now left. This one now we've not given anything in this class, so just created it to make left. And no, this we're still in CSS. The major thing is you understand what it's doing. You understand? Now this open now, if for instance I add open here, okay, automatically my sidebar will be here. But if there is no open class in it, it will go back to where it was. Now this is what's happening. Let's add the opening again. Now let's inspect from our inspector to for you to understand what's going on here. So if we inspect this sidebar from our inspector, okay, we're going to see that when this open class is there, because of the important placed on this guy, okay, it's canceling this guy. So this guy is not working right now, okay. But assuming I remove this important keyword from it, okay, it will now cancel this guy, and this guy will now be the one uh, uh, making effect or having effect on it. You understand? So that is just it. So the idea now is on click of this button, it will toggle this open class, add it or remove it. On click of this button, we're going to affect this sidebar. Check if there's an open class on it. If there is, remove it. If there is not, add it. That's the idea. If there is no open class on it, add it. If there is an open class on it, remove it. So that is just the trick. So what we're going to do now is by default, let's just say the side menu is open by default. It's not open rather. Okay. I think it should be open by default. Let's make it open by default. Okay. So that means when you launch the page, it's there by default. Okay. So now we'll now go to JavaScript. Now on our JavaScript, the button we are going to work with is this button. So we need to give it an ID. Okay. So give it an ID. So we'll give this one an ID. Let's call the ID open side bar. Okay. Then we'll give it an ID open sidebar. Then we'll give the other one an ID too. Where is it? This span. Okay. We'll give the span an ID too. Now the idea of the span will now be close sidebar. Okay. So close sidebar. Okay. Or we can as well give both of them a class. We'll give them same class, toggle sidebar. Okay. In that case, we're going to use one method for it. Like I always tell you, there are simpler and easier way of doing some of all these things. For the sake of learning, that's why I always go the the hard route. You understand? So this thing I'm doing now is just code redundancy. I'm going to write too much code, but it's very very necessary for learning sake. Okay, because we are doing this project now doesn't mean that this is the only thing we're going to do. We'll use the idea now to create other projects. You understand? So if I just go the easier way, you might not really get the entire concept. And even if you get the entire concept of how things are working, now you might find it difficult when you want to do something similar. Understand? So that's why we have to explore. Well, with time, we're going to be going the easier way because I can use class. I use one method to toggle the the side menu. But with these two ID now, I'm going to create two events separately, and each of the events will have their own method. Okay, so that is just it. So let's start with the okay, we have it open by default. So we'll start with the close. Okay. So now if we go to yeah, evening welcome. If we go to the what's it called? Our JavaScript, let's say side bar toggler. Okay. Now the first thing first is we're going to get document dot query selector. Okay, we're selecting the hash close sidebar. Then we're adding an event listener to it. Okay, add event listener. Now when you listen to the click event, okay. Now what will happen is we need a function. Okay, the function. Now the function, what it will do is to get to get our side menu if it has an open class on it. Okay, so we'll simply do something like let variable is open. Okay, yeah, equal to okay um, document sorry document dot query selector. Okay, then who are we selecting? The side menu, right? Then dot class list. Okay, remember I showed you what the class list to do. Get the number of the list of class in that particular element. Okay, uh-huh. Then we'll now say contains a class called open. Okay, remember when we tested this, we said this will return either true or false. That means this variable is open, it will either be true or false. You understand? So what we're going to do now is okay, if okay it's open, okay, if it's open, okay, is equal to true. Okay, and that thing again I want you to know is most times if you're working with JavaScript or most of this model language, I don't really necessarily need to say is equals true. If I just say it's open there and that variable I'm talking about is a boolean variable, it will also work. You understand? Yeah. So, but like I always say, for the sake of learning, if it's equal to true, so that when you review your code, you know that what is what happened there. So we are trying to close it. So if it's equal to true, what we're going to do is we're not checking if it contains this time around. We're going to do what? Remove the class open from it. Okay? So we're removing the class. If it's open, that means there's a class open on it. Now remove it. Okay, so when you do this, if we come to JavaScript and click on this, let's see from our console if there's an error. There's no error. Then what's happening? Did we target this well? Okay, to be sure, let's alert something if actually our click event is being triggered. That's how most times that's how I debug. Okay, when you try something, you're sure the thing is working, you check. See, alert is not even triggering. So let me do this here. Why is it not triggering? We have to check our um, ID side menu. Okay. Then let's check what we are targeting from our JavaScript. side menu, okay, then close sidebar, ID, close sidebar, okay. Okay, this is the problem. This is where, okay, this is the close sidebar. Okay, I was, no, this, normally this is the close sidebar. This is supposed to be open sidebar. I was clicking the wrong thing, okay. So our code is actually working perfectly. Never mind. So same thing applies to open sidebar. So I'll uh, just copy this. Let's say the first code here is to open, close rather, close the sidebar. Okay. Now the second code here will be to open the sidebar. Open sidebar. Okay. So in the case of open sidebar, we're going to use this button instead of the close sidebar button. Okay. So on click of this open sidebar button, what should happen is if it contains a class open, okay, now we don't want to do anything. But if it does not contain it, if it's not equal to true or if it's equal to false, you understand? These are just bad coding practice. Don't worry, but you understand what I'm doing here, right? Mhm. So if it's false, that means there's no open button on it. So add it. Okay? Just add it. You understand? So that is it. So with this, you just click on this comment, click on this to go out. Okay, so you can decide to add some CSS to it. Okay, decide to add some CSS for animation, like the sidebar. What we are doing now, we are toggling the left property, so you can add some transition to the left property. You can say transition. A transition we want to affect the left property. Okay, then we need the transition to be, let's say these are different transition you can use: ease out, ease in, cubic. Let's just use the cubic pizza. Okay, then we want it to happen between 0.5 seconds. Okay, so with this, what we're just going to do is we do this, close this. I think I'm getting the whole thing wrong. Seems the time before is the, let's see. All these things are available. Okay, let's say all. Let's use all transaction first. Okay, let me put something very slow. Let's see, 5 seconds. Come on, let me do something. Transition, diction. Oh, um, is in and out. Then 5 seconds. Okay. So I don't know why the cubic was not working. Okay.
You put 0.5 seconds.
Yes.
Yes, no. You are very fast.
Yes. I removed it because I was not seeing the effect. Okay. Uh-huh. It's better this way. Mhm. So that's just it. So in terms of design, you can design anyhow you want to make your designs. Okay. So like I told you, this is just a hardware. My JavaScript, I can actually use one method to do this. Let's assume. Let's assume. Okay. Uh, let's assume these two things have a class. Okay, let's assume they have a class. Let's call the class toggle toggle side menu. Okay, side menu. Okay. Now, I hope I don't have another class within the span. Okay. So let's say I have a class here, and I also have the same class here. That means I can target both of them accordingly, right? I don't need to target them separately, just like using ID to target them separately. So I can just start toggle this. Now let me comment everything I did here. Okay. Then targeting it with the class, I'll simply say documents, okay, dot query selector. Okay. Then I'll do dot toggle side menu. That's dot toggle side menu. Okay. Now let me just borrow the code from one. Okay, let me borrow the code from here. Add event listener. Okay. So I'll add event listener. It's still the same thing. You can see that it's the same thing I'm doing. The only thing is that since I'm using class, okay, since I'm using class, it will I'm not going to do it twice because both buttons have same class. You understand? So what I'm doing now is it will not be if it is equals to false, add this, else, okay, remove it, okay, or we can make it the other way around. If it's true, okay, that means if there's an open class in it, okay, remove it, okay, else add it. So this automatically do the work for us the same way, okay, okay. There's something, okay, okay, okay. Uh, turbo side. Am I doing something wrong again now? Let me do a lot here. Okay. If I'm doing anything wrong, it will be with the other button. Let's see if I actually got the name correctly. Class, and this class is a close button and does not have a class before now. Okay. So let's see again. Let me test something here. That's it. This one is a Latin. Something is wrong with this button. Okay, so let's inspect the button. We have a toggle side menu, and also I told you the other time that if you have an event on a particular button, you also notice it from your inspector. You can see it's indicating here. But look at this one now. There's no event on it. You understand? There's no event on it to tell you that there's something wrong here. But what's wrong now? That's what I'm yet to find out. I have a class toggle side menu. Okay, okay, okay. There's nothing wrong in it with it rather. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, when I was showing you how to make reference, I told you that when you use .class, .class can be for multiple elements. Okay, but here now we're doing it as if it's a single element. Okay, so what we're going to do here is supposed to this one I thought it would be I thought it would be easier. I forgot the fact that we need query selector all here, not query selector. And if we do query selector all here, we're not going to cannot get what we want like this. Okay, so what we just need to do now is we'll simply say uh, this is going to complicate things for you. Okay, let's see. You will try to understand it. Okay. So this one now, if I say query selector all, it's going to give us a HTML collection. let's 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 say toggler. Let's use a variable now. So that's where we started, where we were doing that will be easier, so that we see what's going on. Okay. So let's say log the toggler, so that we'll see what's there. Okay. Now, if you log the toggler, now this is what you're going to see. You're going to see that the toggler is okay. It's not even HTML collection. It's a node list that have like an array of items that have that class. You understand? So, and another thing again, this node list, uh, we're supposed to loop through them as an array. Then for each one of them, okay, we'll add the event listener to it. Okay, so now let's try something like now that we've not done array, okay, let's use a for loop. Okay, now before we go into the for loop thing too, let me show you something else. If we say dot length, okay, we're going to see the number of elements that have that class. We have two elements. You understand? So when we have the number of elements that have that class, we can simply apply our programming logic using the for loop to loop through. Okay. Now let I is equal to start from 0. Okay. Then I is less than this toggler dot length. Okay. Then I plus plus. Okay. So now for each one of the for each loop, each of the this thing is now an element. So if we log the elements here, okay, if we log the elements variable here, okay, if we log the element variable here, okay, you're going to see that as this loop is looping, each loop we have each of the elements that has a class. Okay, you see, the first one is the span, the second one is the button. You understand? Give you the first one is the class, the second one is the button. So for each one of them now as the elements, okay, what we're going to do now is each one of them is going to have the event listener on it. Okay, so this event listener that we're working on, okay, we now have that uh, field. So now we are adding it to each one of the elements. Okay, each element add the event listener to it. Okay, so now we can now do what we were doing, what I was doing. I was affecting only one. Okay, else. Okay, remove. Okay, if it's true that it is there, we should remove it, right? Remove the class. Okay, s add it. Okay, so with this, okay. So now in this case now, since we are not using one toggler, one button can do the two because we are targeting just that class. So anybody that have that class can toggle the sub menu. You understand?
The call.
This is just a constant. I can still use let, make it a variable. It will still work. Okay, it's just my VS Code, not the keyboard. Just the way the VS Code generates a boilerplate of your HTML for you. If I want to use any of this thing now, these are different for in, for off, for each. All of them are for, but this one is the one I use now. This is for loop, this for each loop, for in loop, for off loop. We're going to talk about them though. Okay, for your W3 school, you have most of them. Okay, so this is just one. This one is using one method to do the whole thing. Okay, so I don't know. Should I leave this one or this one is okay? Just okay. There is something else that can also be done. Yes, not even JavaScript programming. Programming entirely. There are a lot of ways to do things. Now, as this one is a little bit more complicated, but it is the best way to handle some things like that. Then the other mean I was talking about is we can not even array, we can create a function. Okay, we can create a function, dedicated function to toggle the side menu, toggle side menu. Okay, toggle side menu. I think we have toggle side menu. Okay, so this function now, okay, we can or we can say update or change, anyhow we want to call it. Okay, now this function we can simply come here and do this uh, this thing here now, this code. Okay, we're just going to do it here. Okay, so if we do it here, okay, now let me comment this guy out. Okay, let me comment this guy out. Let me reopen these guys again, because these guys now, the way they are now, I can simply remove this code inside it. Okay, then what I will do now, since the whole thing is inside this function, I'll just call this function on click of this event, on click of this open sidebar, go to the toggle. Okay, same thing here. I'll just be calling the method here. You understand? So this automatically will do the same thing. Okay, so automatically will do the same thing. Toggle and click. You understand? So there are various ways you can actually achieve one thing.
Leave it, leave it. Leave it.
Okay,
Let's say you don't
okay. Let me comment. I just want to leave one
this also.
working one. I just want to leave one working one. Okay. Yeah. This one. Let me leave this one. Okay. So that is just it. Okay. Okay. So that is just it. So you can just, the essence of all these things is for you to go through them again to understand the part you didn't understand. After going through them, you add. That doesn't matter since you are not calling it anywhere to be triggered. Since you are not calling it anywhere, it's just there. To only be triggered when you call it. Understand? You can even still call it here without doing this. Without doing this, you understand? You can call it here and it will still work. Okay, so that is just it. So let's just work with this. So we've achieved the two tasks for today, the counter and the side menu. Okay, so that's just it.